Welcome to the enchanting world of the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Prepare to be captivated as we embark on a thrilling journey into the realm of spirituality with our remarkable team of a distinctive energy mixture. Leading the way is Mitch Garlington, a gifted gay male witch, touring stage medium, and psychic tarot card reader. With a background in the competitive corporate world and experience as a Cher impersonator, Mitch brings a fresh and unique perspective to our discussions. Next, we have Lucy Locke, a former fundamentalist Christian missionary turned sex shop manager turned professional dog groomer turned psychic medium, trance channeler, and tarot card reader. Her incredible transformation into the spiritual world is truly inspiring. And last, but certainly not least, we have Carly Batten, a second-generation practicing pagan, intuitive oracle card reader, and spiritual mother to many. Carly brings a grounded approach and simple understanding to the complexities of spiritual living. Together, we form an unstoppable podcast as we delve into all things spiritual and the journey of life. Our mission is crystal clear: to spread the message that spirit embraces all and that each of us is on a spiritual path, whether we realize it or not. So buckle up and get ready for an exhilarating adventure with the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Please note that all ideas discussed and presented in this podcast are the personal opinions of the individual podcasters and do not necessarily reflect the views of each other or the viewers. Hi all, it's us from Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast, and this is our 20th episode. But they say if you make it past 20, you're in the top 1% of all the podcasters out there. So that is awesome. So for our 20th episode, we're going to be talking about fuck off. And what if we're going to be talking about boundaries and saying no and all that kind of stuff, standing up for yourself, being aligned, blah, blah, blah. So
Blah, blah, blah.
anyway,
blah, blah, blah.
If you haven't seen me before or us before, I'm Lucy.
I'm Mitch.
And I'm Carly. Hey.
And welcome, everyone. So who wants to get us started off?
I don't mind. So
Go on, Mitch.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Do you have your bell with you? Because this might be a hot topic. See, I already interrupted you. Do you have your bell today?
You're already going in there. Actually, my bell is behind me. I do have it if I need it. No, we were just talking this morning about, or we were sort of saying about, like, you know, sometimes the most magical, people talk about, like, you know, certain like magical bits to witchcraft and everything, but some of the most magical words are that to just say no to people or to just tell people to politely fuck off, you know, because there is this real misconception that when you're working spiritually or you're of a spiritual nature, that you have to almost be at everybody's beck and call. You have to sort of, you know, sacrifice your soul, and you don't. You know, you can tell people to piss off. You can sort of do what you need to do. You can sort of do what you feel is ethically correct for you. And a lot of people, they seem to struggle with that for some reason, don't they, really?
I think a lot of people struggle with it in the general world as well, the muggly world. Sorry, I don't, you know. And it's all about sort of self-care and
it's your
being
own personal
brave.
boundaries, isn't it, really? I had it recently where a venue asked me, could I go back and serve their centre? And they're a lovely centre, you know, it's nothing disrespectful, but I've done my time in centres. I don't want to roll up to a venue of an evening to do 2 hours worth of show to get paid £10 petrol. I don't want to do that anymore. That was great when I was starting out as a beginning sort of fledgling medium, but I feel, and this is not in an egotistic way, although some people might feel that to be, I feel I'm a bit more established now, and I want to actually be able to get paid a decent wage for working with spirit. And, you know, if people don't like that, tough. That's the contract spirit have created with me. So it's nothing disrespectful to that sort of spiritual centre, and it's a great spiritual centre, and I wish them well, and I hope that they continue to flourish, but I just don't feel I need to be there anymore.
And it's being confident enough to take those steps to say no, and not feel guilty.
Exactly. And they do put pressure on it. Oh, everybody wants to come and see you. They love you so much. Well, if they love you so much, they'll pay £12.50 for a ticket and come to my main show.
Exactly. It's knowing your
You know?
worth. And people think that's ego when it's
Mm,
like, oh, I know my worth. And it's not ego. It's self-confidence, you know,
exactly. You
and
know, that was
self-worth.
yeah, and it's like that was a great space for when I was developing and like had my L plates on, as I say, but I'm long past that now, you know. Um, and there's room for lots of other great mediums that are new on the scene and are coming up, you know. That's a great opportunity for them. But for me, I feel a little bit more established. I've been doing it for over 15 years now, you know. And I think that's the other thing. Some people, they just discover you, so they assume, oh, you're new on the block. But actually, I've been doing this for a while. Just because they've only just discovered me, perhaps, you know.
Yeah, it's like when you discover an actor in a movie and you go, oh, well, my God, this is an amazing actor. And then you go and look on IMDb or whatever, and you realize, well, they've been around for freaking years. You know,
Yeah,
how
and you're
did I
just
just
kind of slow
discover
to the
them? Yeah,
party.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's
spirits.
go on, Luce. What were you going to say? Jump in.
I was just going to say, like, Spirit's been showing me some stuff. Even before we joined this meeting, we kind of had a vague idea of what we were going to talk about. And I walked into the bedroom and the TV was playing in the bedroom on YouTube and it was all Carl Jung stuff. Carl Jung's a famous psychotherapist or psychologist he's the inventor of shadow work or the creator of shadow work and all that kind of stuff.
Archetypes.
Yeah, yeah. I love Carl Jung. Love Carl Jung. And but I didn't have it on Carl Jung. I had it on brown noise before that, which is like a sound. So when it stopped the brown noise, you know how your algorithm goes. But anyway, so I heard a few bits and it was talking about lack of boundaries and how lack of boundaries actually comes from trauma.
Okay.
So, and also empathy. So there's different types of the empathy I see in our spiritual communities and stuff like that, especially with the witchy kind of community, the psychic kind of community, the mediumship kind of community, is a bypassing energy. I see it a lot where they have these gifts, people have worked on these gifts, but they've not dealt with their trauma in life. So they use it to bypass the trauma and they feel better because they can use these gifts and they kind of get a fulfillment out of it. But what happens with trauma is when especially if it's like trauma in childhood where you're growing up with a complex trauma or consistent trauma where your family or something like that's abusive on many different levels, many different ways, is you don't learn boundaries. And also, your empathy is coming from a place of trauma instead of a place that is boundaried.
Like
So this,
healthy almost, yeah.
yeah. So like your empathy could be from a place of need or a place of fear. Does that make sense? So if I'm not empathetic, people aren't going to love me back. If I'm not empathetic, yeah, I like you're almost looking for that energy exchange. You know, have you ever met people that are like sucking the energy out of you, but they're showing you empathy, but you're also feeling like, oh my God, I'm being like a little bit.
You're draining the shit out of me, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
That's unhealed. That's unhealed empathy, right? Healed empathy always comes with boundaries, right? Empathy should not feel like you're drained afterwards.
Yeah.
Empathy is knowing who you are, but you're able to extend, I'm really sorry, I understand, or I'm here for you, but you're not losing touch with who you are. You're not giving of yourself. You're giving, you might be a vessel where spirit comes through you and gives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not being drained. Does that make sense? You're not coming to burnout. What else spirit wanted to showed me while you guys were talking, which was pretty awesome, is when you don't have boundaries, when you don't have that ability to say no, you're actually not in alignment with yourself.
Yeah,
with your
definitely.
higher being, with who you truly are. You're actually lying because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to that other person.
It's the unheld healer, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And that can bring across what spirit really spoke to me, brings across depression, self-hatred, and self-loathing. Because you ended up just giving yourself of yourself all the time, and then you get resentful and you get bitter and you get very angry at yourself. Also, it's proven that 80% of people with autoimmune diseases are women. So autoimmune be fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis. There's loads of sorry people out there, because I know loads of people in our community have autoimmune diseases, including me, including me. And it's proven scientifically that those people have lack of boundaries in their life. They give, 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 give to the point that their body is screaming, no more.
That's interesting.
No more. Right? It's you're actually, some doctors say it's the gift to the person that has no boundaries to say, you gotta fucking stop.
Yeah.
Right? There's a book all about it called When the Body Says No. And it's about that, where it's about autoimmune diseases, basically, that you've given so much of yourself that, and I did it through grooming. We were just talking about our jobs. I was a yes man, okay? I got to the stupid point, and I apologize to any of my grooming friends listening that worked under me, where we were doing stupid amounts of dogs to keep a business alive that didn't give a shit about us. Right? And I was doing at some points 16 to 24 dogs a day I was grooming me.
Wow. Bloody hell.
To the point I'd get home and I was just like exhausted. I did that and I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And it was, I gave and 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 just ruined my body. And now I have to say no regularly. I have to say, I can't do that. Because it ended up that I gave so much that Spirit is showing me, you've got to give back to yourself, and it's through this disease. Do I like it? Nope. But
it's a real double-edged sword, isn't it? Yeah, because that's almost like, some people could say that like the rheumatoid arthritis is almost a gift in a way, even though the physical element of it is fucking uncomfortable, I would imagine, you know?
But when you take care of yourself and when you're in alignment with yourself, your symptoms get better.
Okay.
So if you're eating healthy, does that make sense? And taking care of your body, if you're doing regular exercise, if you're being true to yourself, taking yourself first, your symptoms get better. And when I'm not feeling better, when I'm having flare-ups, is when I'm not managing my stress, when I'm not taking care of my sleep, when I'm not taking care of my food and intake of what I'm eating, when, and I had very lack of self-care, and that was part of my trauma, was I didn't take very good care of myself, and I was never taught to take very good care of myself. And to like my body. I was taught actually not to like my body a lot. And so this is actually training this disease. It's making me go, and it's very uncomfortable because everything inside of me says, I don't want to do this. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to take care of my body. I don't like my body. But this disease, everything about it is taking care of myself, taking care of my body, going to the doctor and having to present my body to them. You know, when that was like, but Spirit is
now
really
you're
showing
like,
me.
this is it, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go. Didn't even shave my legs today for you. You know, because I can't. No, it is a gift, and it is a gift, and it isn't. Does that make sense? But I think I'm seeing it more and more as a gift, because I realize I've got to love myself. If I don't love myself, I'm going to die. Or I'm going to be very, very crippled. Does that make sense? And so this has taken me on a journey of self-love. And Spirit knew that was the cry of my heart. But he also, it wasn't going to happen unless something drastic happened, because I wasn't going to just switch on my own.
But also, we spend so much time with ourselves, so the best connection has to be with us, doesn't it, really? You know?
Amen. That's awesome. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and, you know, and so many people are, like we say, are not in that, or giving the illusion of being in that, but you know, they're full of shit, really.
And I think a lot of people are in the illusion of being healed, and I was in that illusion where I'm like, oh, I can talk about my story, right? And there's no real shame attached to my story, but I was still being triggered. I was still, you know, not taking care of my body. I was still not like this in itself. I'm going to say to you guys, I'm still smoking this. But for 2 weeks now, no nicotine in there.
Well, that's good.
This is all just now it's just habit Does that make sense of getting rid of it? But I'm not addicted to the nicotine anymore, which I'm really, really freaking proud of myself because it's been a long journey of getting rid of nicotine out of my body. But it, that's another thing of spirit saying that's part of the loving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I was all about the spirituality and spirit's talking to me more and more about, no, it's got to be about your body too, Lucy, because that's part of the spirituality is your body. I don't think I'll ever become one of these, like, you see those people that are all plastic surgeryed up and they're like, the life coaches and they're like all sinewy and they can, come and join me on my hot yoga and, I've made $1 million because I was in manifesting and in line with myself. I'm never going to be one of those, but just loving myself more and more.
Just being enough for you, isn't it?
Exactly. Secret things. Like I still love my fucking McDonald's. I must admit, we went last night twice. Twice. Okay. We had supper and then picked up Min and then we had dessert. I must admit, it's terrible. I'm not good. I'm not going to act like I don't want anyone to ever think that I'm professing that they're like, look at me. I can't hide it. I'm saying my body says, like my body just shows. But it's also loving me for me right now, But Spirit is showing me that if I still stay aligned with their love for me and my love for myself, things change.
Yeah.
Because I'm not good forced. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm not good forced. I like my freedom. Does that make sense? I like my ability to choose what I want to choose and do what I want to do. So like when someone says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that," it makes me want to do it more. Does that make sense? I'm like, it makes me want to do it more. So for me, quitting habits, I know it has to come from just more and more love for myself. And then I come to my own decision of like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
And it's like not a forced thing. It's like, I'm kind of done with this. So I'm trusting spirit because I've seen them over my lifetime do this for me, where I go, you know what? I'm done with this. They're not spirit. When I've met people that have tried to force me into things saying it's spirit, and I realize spirit doesn't work in that way in my life. It doesn't mean it doesn't work in other people's ways, okay? But in my way, it's more spirit just has to be more subtle with me, and they've got patience. And if I die fat, I die fat. You know what I'm saying? If I die tomorrow of a heart attack, I don't know why we got on this.
And we're still
we're going dark now. We're going dark now.
Yeah, but at least if it was to end tomorrow, you can say, "Oh, I've had some fucking good food, haven't you?" So...
Yeah. And you know what? I love myself more than I loved myself yesterday, and more than I loved myself 10 years ago. Way more than I loved myself 10 years ago. And from my teenage childhood years and my 20s, my God, I'm a totally different person. Totally different person in the sense of how I see myself and how I perceive myself with people, which I'm really, really happy. I'm actually at a place. I'm not where I want to be. I have still future hopes of where I am, but I am at a place where I'm mighty comfortable with most of me, and not all, but most of me, where I wasn't ever comfortable even in my own skin. So I'm quite proud of my journey with spirit. Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, it's
if I
also
die a fat bastard, I die a fat bastard. I'm all right with that. Just burn me. It'll smell good, the fat. Everyone likes a bit of fat burning.
We'll just roast you on a barbecue.
Exactly. Sorry, guys.
What's your thoughts on it, all, Carly? Because Carly, you had a good thing that you sort of, to move it back on course. You had a good thing you were talking about earlier about like you heard something and it was reference relationships and saying no in a relationship.
Yeah, well, because obviously we were all talking about this, this morning with firing, as we always do, fire messages backwards and forwards, and the wonderful world of Amazon Music and shuffle lists and recommendations. So I'm walking back from the ponies, and the song that came on was the basis of the song was the young lady was in a relationship and probably a friend's, with benefits relationship. And he'd knock on the door at 10 o'clock at night and appear with his bedroom eyes, and she'd still find herself not being able to say no. and she'd then kick herself and get frustrated that she'd got into a situation, where she knows she should be saying no. She knows she should not be succumbing to his wooing, but there was just something about him to her. It was like an addiction, and she could not say no. And that happens, in what happens in normal life, doesn't it? You find yourself.
Oh, that happened to me in my late teens to early 20s, where I had that specifically one boy, man, whatever, where I lived, where we lived in staff accommodation. Yeah,
a boy man,
man child knocked on my door consistently to my apartment. My other roommates would be like, "He's here," and he'd be drunk out of his mind, and I'd go over and we'd have a shag, and it was like, because I felt so empty, I took it that was like care, and it was just he was using me. Does that make sense? And
did you see that as love at the time, though? Did you?
100%, because I honestly, this is how low I thought of myself, that I didn't that's what I was going to get in life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I come from a background where I was so deformed when I was younger due to my neck and my jaw, and then I had jaw surgery. And just because I had the surgery didn't change how I felt inside about myself. And so just because my outer looks changed, my inners were not dealt with at all. And so, yeah, when I was 18, the first boyfriend, my first technical real boyfriend, he was in his 30s, and he just used the shit out of me. And then he dumped me and left me for a friend of mine, and they were married. He passed away a few years ago, but they were married, and she was my good friend, my good friend. And so then I moved away because I needed to get away from it all, because that's what I do. You'll see a pattern in my life where I'm like a runner. I don't run anymore, but I ran many times. So I moved far away, living on a whole group of people. And that's how I began to smoke, because they were like, "Oh, where you're going to be living, they're all smokers." And I was like, okay. And I trained myself to smoke. Now I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm still dealing with that. And that was when I was 18, just to fit in. Does that make sense? And to not be like, the lack of alignment in my life, the lack of boundaries I had are still messing me up to this day. Where I'm loving myself, but I'm still dealing with the habits of things. And yeah, so yeah, with him, I'm actually still in contact. Years later, he sent me a letter apologizing for what he did to me and all that kind of stuff.
He's acknowledged.
Oh, yeah. We're friends on Facebook. You might watch this. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I've let go of that. I'm talking about my lack of boundaries. So I'm not looking at what he did use me, but that's his thing. My lack of boundaries was I allowed him to use me. And I did see it as him wanting me, because I felt so sex was a form of feeling
wanted, yeah,
needed, attractive, having a place in this world, grounding myself, having a place, actually being recognized and seen.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had your time now, you'd be like, "No, fuck
exactly."
off.
Yeah. It's funny how things work out too. This is trauma, or how things work out years later. Okay, years. It had to be 10 years after this. Like, I hadn't seen him or whatever. And I was at a gas station late at night. This is back in Canada. And I was waiting in line to pay for my gas. And I smelt alcohol, right, with this certain cologne. And I was like, it took me right back to him, right? And then I heard this voice, and I turned around, and he was standing right behind me. And he's like, "Oh, Lucy." And I was like, holy crap. I'm not going to say the person's name, but like, it's amazing how smells and everything can just like take you like that. But it's funny, because I think it was about 2 days before that, I had done a cord cutting with him.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I was able to talk to him, and I said, "Oh, hello, blah, blah, blah. How are you?" And la, la, la. And then it was years later, when Facebook came in, that he found me and wrote an apology to me, saying that.
I think that's nice that he's owned that, like, for
the other one with the one that, same with the other one that had cheated on me with my friend and then ended up marrying her. He found me on Facebook years later and wrote an apology letter to me too. So yeah, no,
That's
spirit
big
just
because
wrap things up.
yeah, because a lot of people don't do that. They do the stuff, but then they just live with that. They don't actually go back into it or
Apologize.
explore. Yeah. Have you guys had situations, you probably have, where you've been reading for people and you have like the empathy of like almost why are you putting up with this shit? And you almost want to say no on their behalf, kind of thing. Because I've had that a lot recently where beautiful people, amazing clients, but just no respect or love of self, and you're like, literally, why are you degrading yourself with this situation? And I find that very hard as a reader to sort of stay impartial, because you can't get involved, you can't take it on because it's not yours to take on, and they have to learn the lesson for themselves. But it's like, why would you put yourself through that?
I've had it when
Yeah.
I've been I mean, I've had it when I've been reading for someone. I've had it when I've had conversations with people on the stall, and that you know, and you get that feeling of that real gut feeling in your stomach where you sit there and you just look at them, you just say to them, look after yourself, tell people no, you know, why are you putting up with this? And I think because we've all experienced that, and we've all, I say, come out the other side, because we're all still deal with bits and pieces every now and again, because we do sometimes say yes and kick ourselves afterwards with frustration for agreeing in the first place. So I think because we're so empathic and so passionate about saying no, I think we have more feeling and more power behind wanting to tell the person stood in front of us, either sat having a reading or on the stall, that you've got to look after yourself. And to try and get that across without being too pushy is quite difficult, isn't it? So, I mean,
Oh, I
I've
just
had,
tell them to fuck
yeah.
off. Like,
I mean, I tell people you've got to look after yourself, and I try and say to them, no, I really mean this. You've got to say no, whatever the situation is happening that you're finding yourself being sucked into, and you're not setting up your own personal boundaries, you really need to do it. And I mean, then it's, once you pass on the information, it's then up to the person that's in front of you. I mean, it's just recently happened with Jazzy. I mean, I know she listens to the podcast, and watching her is sometimes like watching me. So as I was growing up, I was very much a yes person. And it was a case of, I just want to be helpful. That's the type of person I am. But I would find myself saying yes to everybody, and not reading people. So sometimes you do but to have boundaries, and I think this just comes with wisdom and age and being around a lot of people. You find that sometimes you deal with people in life that manipulate you. And they're very clever at it. They're very clever because they come across lovely. So Jazzy's just currently had a situation where somebody Jazz was organizing something with somebody, and it was all around sort of getting party stuff ready and stuff like that. And this particular sort of person was talking about certain things and was going, oh, well, I don't know if I can find that, or, oh, well, I don't really know what I want. And Jazzy, and I told her off because Jazzy suffers with IBS, and that is brought on through stress and doing too much. And she knows this because she's gone through dietitians. She's very body aware, so she knows that it can bring on her IBS. And she said to me, she said, Mum, I offered to do such and such, and I've also offered to do this as well. And I said, Jazz, I said, you've been steered in the direction where you've then gone, oh, I can do that for you. Oh, I can do that for you. And she went, yeah, I know, Mum. And then she ended up, bless her, over the weekend, because she was then running around doing this, making that, gathering this. Poor girl then ended up having an IBS flare up, because she'd got herself in a pickle.
Being a servant almost again, isn't it?
Yeah. And I said to her, you've got to learn to say no. If somebody sits in front of you and says to you, or stands in front of you and goes, oh, well, I said, you're not being mean if you just go, oh, well, here's a phone number of somebody else that can help you out. I said, you're not being mean if you're if you don't take the bait, retrospectively speaking. And that's what it is, you know. I mean, that the person that sort of put Jazzy in this situation, they're not a mean person, they're not a nasty person. They just know that Jasmine will go, oh, well, I can do that for you.
We
So
don't have to run this person over then.
No, don't run this person over.
I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're manipulating. I think it's something they've learned from a very, very young age to get their way. Does that make sense? That maybe, and it can come from trauma, you know, that kind of thing. I talk about trauma because trauma is such a part of our society that we don't even realize it, and it just infiltrates and changes.
But it's in varying degrees, isn't it? So when you say trauma, it's a very broad spectrum. Very broad spectrum, from something very tiny to something very big.
Yeah, but like, for instance, I know people that have been raised like in an alcoholic's home. Right? So they've had to learn ways to talk to their parents that are alcoholics. And some of those ways are manipulative to get their way, because if they ask a blatant, and it's for survival. It's not even survival mode. It's survival. So they take it into their day-to-day life, not even realizing from a young age that actually is an unhealthy way to communicate with people. They just take it that that's how you communicate with people. And it's part of their being for the time being, because from such a young age. But does that mean we have to put up with it? No. Does that make sense? You don't. From like, you pulled the Nine of Wands this morning, Mitch, and I love that card, because that card is about, I look at it too as having empathy and passion for people, but also staying in your own lane, staying in your own boundaries. Does that make sense? Of I will be here for you, but I've got my life to serve too. You know. And
hence why he's guarding his post, isn't he? So he's aware of what's going on, but he's guarding that energy.
Yeah,
I mean, I wish I would
cut off. He's got the fence posts allow the energy of spirit to move through, but not your own energy. Does that make sense? And a lot of people play the down, like a lot of women, and I don't want to put down on women, but it is prominent in our culture of playing the damsel in distress type thing to get ways that they. You know what I'm saying? We see a woman and she's in need and we go, oh, okay. And we end up giving too much of ourselves. If you hesitate to give, then it's a no. If you feel a hesitation inside of yourself, don't feel bad for feeling that hesitation. That is actually spirit or your higher being, because you are part of your being is part of the spiritual world saying, no, not this time. Does that make sense? There might be something around the corner and you go, why am I feeling hesitant? Because I don't, but there might be something around the corner where you are needed more and you're going to spread yourself too thin. If that hesitation comes, it's a no. But I even had the blatant no in me, and I would still say, yeah, okay. Because I was so scared of rejection. Does that make sense? I was so scared of I definitely had FOMO, fear of missing out, a lot. You know what I'm saying? A lot. That I would just give of myself, or put myself in situations where I knew this was not good for me at all. But I still did it because I just was so happy that someone actually paid some sort of attention to me. And so I was at such a low vibration in myself that I attracted fucking low vibration. Does that make sense? And so we see it in our communities. It's not, you know how you see people and you go, oh my God, look at the lives they live in, the people they hang out with, and it just comes from lack of self-love and trauma, that their vibration is so low that anyone at this vibration up here they're just, does that make sense? It's going to pass it. So that's what they attract.
Also, you got sort of the other end of the scale. You're obviously talking about that, Lucy, but it made me think actually of how I brought Jazzy up. You know, going back to sort of Jazzy's situation. So, I was obviously, everybody knows Grandad and Bardware. The majority of people know Grandad and Bardware, and my dad is again another person who would happily help anybody, and that's not to fit in, not because he lacks self-confidence, because I mean, you've seen him, he sits there and he's quite happy in his own space, he couldn't really.
That's why he's very regal when he sits in, and he's just
yes, yes.
He does have a warmth to him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't really feel as though he has to make conversation, which actually makes some people feel quite uncomfortable, because
I know, I feel like he's sitting all regal and just like all the forest animals are going to come in around him. And
they do. Yeah, they do. There's a crow sat on his shoulder, bird shit down his face, Well, he is that type of person. So, but he also, growing up, he would also help people. He'd go out his way to help people because they needed help, not because of anything else. I mean, I remember as a kid, Christmas Day, him mending burst water pipes and stuff like that for somebody, for somebody else. There's water spraying everywhere and stuff like that. And because I've been brought up like that, I found myself as a kid saying yes and helping lots of people, to the point that I ended up having like 12 horses to look after. 3 of them were my own, plus 9 others, and that's quite a lot for 14, 15-year-old. And I brought my kids up exactly the same way, but Jazzy has taken on my traits where she will try and help anybody. And I look at her now, and I think, no, don't do that, because I know that now, as a 50-year-old woman, that it's not always beneficial for your own health, and for your own space. And I keep trying to say to her, you don't have to help everybody. It doesn't hurt to say no. And I remember being Jazzy's age and feeling guilty for not helping somebody who needed help. There's a thing, if somebody's rolling around in the middle of the road with their arm hanging off, then help them. They need help. If you can help them. But if it's something that really somebody else can do, then let somebody else do it. If it means you've got to turn yourself inside out and upside down and go completely out of your way, then I'm sure there's somebody else that can help that person rather than yourself.
And also, is that person avoiding something themselves?
Well, possibly they could be, and depending on what the situation is, isn't it? That's the thing.
Because a lot of people project because they don't want to have to sort of be
they don't have to think.
Sort of look at it. Yeah, they want someone
some
to just
people
come
don't
in and
want to
pick them
think
back up, don't they?
Yeah. Some people don't want to think. Some people, and I think that's what tended to be just currently the situation with Jazz. Is I think that person that sort of went, oh well, didn't really want to think. Didn't want to have. I mean, as then Jazzy has then actually then taken on that person's problems, which she doesn't need to. That's that person's problems and not Jazzy's. But my son Johnny, he does help people when he needs to, but he's also got the ability to say no. And actually, as a mum, sometimes I find that really frustrating, because my natural thought pattern is to help. So he sits there and goes, well, I'm not doing that. He never does it to me. And most of the time he says, yes, Mum, I'll come and help you, or, he will help. But there'll be like people out the family circle where they go, oh, no, I can't do it. I'm too busy. I'm like, how does he do that?
And it's healthy boundaries, isn't it?
That's
healthy boundaries. I quite like Johnny. He's quite easy on the eye when I've seen him, but but that's a side note. No, I just remember him at one of my shows, and spirit were coming in quite prominent. So but.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, poor lad. You can definitely tell that he's from my stable anyway. Bless him.
He is quite hot. He's credit where credit's due. He's nice.
I should think so too. He's my son. Of course, he's quite hot. And my daughter's not bad looking either.
Oh dear.
But Johnny has got that ability to say no. And I brought the kids both up the same way. And I admire him for that, because I get frustrated because I say to him, well, you could have helped. Yeah, Mum, but I'm busy. I've got other stuff on. And he doesn't feel guilty. And I admire him because he set himself boundaries. So whilst, some people, you have the trauma, which then you're people pleasing, which then you want to fit in and you don't want to miss out and you feel wanted and needed. You get some people along that are trying to help and, and say yes too much and feel guilty when they don't say yes too much. And I think it's those people that need to read situations of the person asking for the help, that they're not getting sucked into it, and learn to say no. Because you tend to notice after the situation, don't you? You tend to notice after something has happened. It's like Jazzy has noticed afterwards. She's gone, yeah, I was slightly sort of moved into that, wasn't I? And I'm like, yeah, you were, you know. But does that come through age? Does that come through wisdom? I don't know.
I think we actually know in our inner being when we're being manipulated and when we're manipulating. I think but you've been either not taught, but you've like ignored it for so long that it's kind of like this background feeling. Does that make sense? That you just don't even think, but like, all of us have manipulated at one point or another. We all have. Okay, we're human. It's what we do. It's part of our life. And
I've done the damsel in distress bit. I've done it. Help me.
I still do it with Colin all the time. This morning, I'm like, he's like, "Oh, do you want something to eat?" And I'm like, "If you're making it." Otherwise I'll sit here starving, and then he goes and makes it for me. I do. Like, it's like, we learn patterns with each other, but and we know that when we've been manipulated, but a lot of times we don't want to admit to when we've been manipulated. We want to see the person through the rose-colored glasses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And just because you have that feeling, oh, I'm being manipulated, it doesn't mean that person's a horrible person. It just means that they're coming from a place that's not, they're too afraid to ask a yes or no question to you. Will you help me? Like, and I need help. And like, I have to talk to Colin a lot about that. He gets very nervous asking people for help. Does that make sense? And I'm like, they can just say no if they don't want to help you. And it doesn't mean they're, hating us or anything like that. It just means they can't at this moment, but it doesn't hurt to ask,
Exactly. Do you know what pisses me off a little bit is when you get like some people, I don't know if you guys get it, but I get it quite a lot with clients where they're wanting a spell to resolve something. And you look at the situation and you think, you don't need a spell to resolve that. The only spell you need is the power to say, no, I'm not prepared to sort of put myself into that space. But do you find that some people try to, like we talked about bypassing, they'll use magic as a way to bypass sometimes?
Are they using that as
No has the energy, right? What is a spell? It's moving energy, right? It's getting energy to work for you. Well, no is the fastest way to get the energy to work for you. You know what I'm saying? It is a spell. No. Yes.
Exactly.
Do you think talking at something that came up? Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Liz, cutting in. Do you think do you think that sometimes that some people ask for that spell, but that then backs up the confidence? So it works like a placebo effect, gives them the confidence to then carry on through and then say no.
Yeah, I think sometimes
I know it's slightly. Yeah, I mean, I know it's sort of, it can also be bypassing because you're not prepared to put the work in and find, because there's a lot that's involved with that. So if someone's asked for a spell and then they have to look at themselves and do the shadow work and things, and there's finding their inner self and all, that's a lot to do. So
I just feel like sometimes people want that quick fix of a spell.
Yeah, quick fix.
100% they want that quick fix, and it's easy, right? So for me, when I do spell work, I look at spell work as mental health work. I really do. So when I'm doing candle work, right, I carve into the candle what I want out of me. Does that make sense? Or what I want to see happen, depending on what I want to manifest, right? Because I know that my brain, my brain and how I work, I have to be careful because it can get into obsessive where I realize, oh, fuck me, I'm just thinking about that all the time.
I feel like she's got a candle for both of us, Carly, here. She's got
probably,
Mitch,
probably, yeah.
These probably big killer candles lighting the back.
But like for a quick thing, like, so, I don't know. There's many for instances for candle work. So I wanted a couple more people to join my course. Does that make sense that I'm doing this week, right? So I took a candle and I wrote specifically what my brain, what my innards were wanting. You can look at it as manifesting. I look at it as getting it out of me. Does that make
Mm.
sense? Because I'm sitting there just going, please, 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 please. And it's like taking up all my time and all my energy. So I really look at it, getting that energy into that candle and burning it. So I look at it as a mental health thing, an emotional health
Mm,
thing for me doing
mm,
spell work. If it doesn't work, it's all right for that time being. It got it out of me,
mm,
Mm.
right?
mm. Well,
So I've
that's
had
like anything, isn't it? Like paper, bay leaf, put in the pot,
100%.
on the
When
fire.
someone's bothering me,
Mm,
I put down their name. Does that make sense? If
mm,
it's really become obsessive, I put down their name on a piece of paper and I fold it away. And then I
mm,
put down what, like, and then I sign it. Does that make sense? I fold it away and then I flush it down the toilet or I burn it. And what it is just a mental, and I always write with love. Does that make sense? I want this removed from me with
Yeah.
love. Like I don't, and it works for me because it gets it out of me. Some people, it could be journaling where they
mm,
just get it
mm,
out, get it out, get it out. Does that make sense? But I look at spell work as getting shit out of me and
mm,
giving it to the spirit or into the ether or to wherever you want to call it.
mm,
Just
mm.
getting that energy out of my
For some
body.
people, it's taking a plate, writing it down, and then smashing it across the room. That's me.
100%.
Or your
100%.
stick, the stick in the river. Your stick in the river as well. You do
Yeah.
that as well, don't you?
Now I
French
love
Yeah.
stick and
smashing. I think I've got an addiction.
you know what you're getting for Christmas, don't you? You're getting a car boot for sale box of plates.
But I think it's when it erupts, you just feel that release of energy
Hmm.
almost, you know?
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
I totally agree with it because I did a plate smashing thing with a woman that was a therapy thing for
Thinking of
me
doing.
of taking like all my anger and just we were in this like safe area, we had our goggles on, and I just like and she was yelling like harder, throw it harder, that kind of thing, and it was like building up the energy in me to get that anger out
Yeah,
of me that I have held. And I don't even know the story of where that is. I know some of the stories, but we didn't go through story. It was getting the energy
just
of that
getting
anger.
energy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
putting it into like a ball and releasing it in something.
And that's what I do in the 6 week thing is one of those. It's all these different emotions. You controlling the emotion and getting it out of you. Does that
Yeah,
make
Mm,
sense? Taking it in your
absolutely.
body and getting it out of you. But yeah, people definitely bypassing is easy, but it's not a
mm,
fix. Does that make
Mm.
mm,
sense? It's not a long-term fix.
And then
It
you get
just
those
feels good
types
in the
that
moment.
the spell didn't work or
Yeah,
whatever. You know, you get that all
yeah,
the time. Oh, that spell hasn't worked. And it's
mm,
like, but
yeah.
because you haven't really dealt with the root, have you? So,
Yeah.
mm,
Well, I saw it a lot in the Christian church and I see it a lot in this like community too, like that which is for beginners or whatever. You get people going, can someone share a spell with me how to make this person fall in love with me? And it's like, oh, they have free choice. And I would see
mm,
that like in the Christian church too, where they're like, oh, God told me this person's going to marry me. And it's like, they haven't even paid attention to you. Like they like basically you're just a spiritual stalker. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like you're actually, and like it's like, well, people have free choice. So if they're not showing you attention, I don't know if the spell is gonna work. You can ask spirit to maybe get it out of you and say, I want to be with this person, and just being honest with spirit. I really like this person. I want to be with
mm,
this person. And then being open to but letting it go. Does that make sense? Letting go of the result. And that's part of spell work is letting go of the result. It's about basically, it's like prayer. It's like, this is what I'd like to see happen,
mm. It's putting that
but I'm
energy
open. Yeah,
out
but I'm
into the
open to what you
universe and that
want,
thought
spirit.
pattern, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like a
mm,
birthday wish on a candle, wishing on a star, blowing a fairy, the dandelion clock
yeah,
fairies, making a wish on a fairy. It's that whole taking that thought pattern and that energy, putting it into something and letting it go, no matter how or which way you do it, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And your answer might not come right away.
No.
You know, it might be that you have to have that patience or wait. And I've had loads of things where I'm like, oh my God, I asked that for that 15 years ago, this feeling I have now that I want to be free in this. Does that make sense or whatever? And I've
Mm,
got it now. And but it was a longing of
mm,
my heart way back when, but it's a process.
mm,
And it's also to teach us and to show us what spirit has in store. Like, so for me, it might be circumstances and people that I've met in my life that have brought more and more healing to that area so that I can now go, that's what worked for me. I'm going to try to pass that along to other people, but it's not an instantaneous. It's a process, you know? If it's instantaneous all the time, then there's nothing to share with people because it's like, well, this worked for me this one time and it was, you know, maybe a fluke but other people it's process and you have, I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are making sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I just go on and I'm like, I know what it's saying in my brain, but I don't know if I'm actually communicating this out correctly.
Well, it's like the process of learning to say no, isn't it? It's like the process of learning to say no. You know, it's whether it's a spiritual path or whether or not it's a muggle's path, you have to go through certain things in your life to get you to a certain point that you are strong enough and confident enough to turn around and say no, which is why we then sit here like we are now going, don't be ashamed or feel guilty for saying no. It's
yeah.
You know,
and when you say that no, you know, I got it where inside of me I knew. Does that make sense? It was like, so there's like you know how you talk about the angel and the devil on your shoulder, Carly. I've had it where, oh, I know. Okay, I'm saying no, and I say no, and then it could be immediately or it could be a day later. All of a sudden, I get this guilt, right?
I was just about to say about the guilt, and it makes it, and then you think,
it's actually called false guilt.
Yeah.
Right. So it is actually part of your conditioning, of your trauma, this part of you, the shadow that comes up and says, that's really not
and
like, even though you wanted this,
it, won't you?
Even though you wanted this is what society wanted from you. And this is what's expected from you. Does that make sense? Or your parents would have expected this from you. And this is your punishment for saying no, this guilt or whatever. Does that make sense? It's different for all of us, but that's that shadow that needs to be looked at and integrated because it's called false guilt. Because you know in your inner being that no at that moment was what you really wanted.
Exactly. And that's the I tell you what, I think that is why a lot of us struggle to say no, because we know we're going to get that inner guilt afterwards or that false guilt afterwards. So I think that's what stops us going
100%.
no initially.
Or you get branded like a troublemaker because you've said no, and it's like, all of a sudden that
because you don't fit in. Well, you don't fit in to what other people are expecting. This is the thing, because you're not fitting into what they expect you to do. That's not right, but that's their problem. That's not a you problem. That's a them problem.
You get branded as unpredictable, outrageous. Sorry, this is just me personally, what people have said, but because they don't like it, because you've actually got enough respect to say, no, I'm not going to put myself through that.
That's a them problem, isn't it? And then again, in you've then got to deal with this false guilt afterwards, because you'll go over and you'll be thinking in your head going, was it the right thing to say? Perhaps I shouldn't have said that, or perhaps I should have said yes. And you end up talking yourself out of it and into and out of a situation. And I think like Lucy was saying, you doing that shadow work and realizing, actually stopping and taking a minute, is this really how I feel, this guilt, for 2 days later or a day later? And you sit there and go, no, it's not, because I know saying no was the right thing to do. Well, completely and utterly disregard what you understand, it's there, acknowledge it, and then just get rid of that guilty feeling, because you will feel a lot better for saying no in the first place, if you know what I mean. And if that person that you've said no to, or that situation that you've said no to, they're still kicking off, just you've got to take a deep breath and go, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. I'm looking after me. I'm not able to do that. What you want me to do, I am living up to my expectations and not your expectations. I am accepting myself and not looking for acceptance from you. And I think that's the key, isn't it? And it's very hard, especially when you're young, or, you know, sort of not where we are in our lives and our age group that we're in. I think it's very hard when you're young.
What are you trying to say?
Mentally get around that. Well, we're a bit older and wiser in our years.
You said you were an old woman in a man's body. That's what you told us just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I think I'm an 80-year-old.
You said you were a perimenopausal woman in a man's body. One thing, I totally agree with you, Carly. And there's those of us that have been stuck in that yes man, yes man
syndrome.
Syndrome for most of our lives, that it will be very foreign to our bodies to say no. Does that make sense? Because the chemicals are so used to saying yes, and it'll be very foreign to the people around us for us to say no. What I suggest, and this is what we do in counseling, is if this is you need to put these boundaries up in your life, you practice with a person that knows you're going to practice with them. Does that make sense? That's not going to leave you, that knows that this is something that you struggle with, and you practice them asking you things and you going, no. Does that make sense? And getting the chemicals in your body used to the no. Also having them fight back a bit so that you get that stronger feeling in your body, because I'll tell you, it's hard if you go out there to your circle and all of a sudden you're saying no. I'm going to tell you, people get used to the way you are, and that vibration's attracted to that vibration. As soon as you raise that vibration, they're going to try to fucking pull you down to what they're comfortable with. Does that make sense? They're not going to raise you.
I've been doing this quite a lot with Paul. Like, he'll say to me, do you want to have sex today? I'm like, no.
He's all over you. Just
Oh, dear. Sorry, I can't resist that.
And now you can't even get an erection. You practice so much. No,
No, I don't have any problems there, actually.
But it's practice, because you go out there and you say no to someone and they're used to you saying yes. Does that make sense? And you're with people that are of that vibration that they use you. Does that make sense? It's going to be a tough, depending on the relationship and stuff like that, it could be a very tough situation to get through. So it's having that person around you that you could practice with. Yeah, and if it's your husband and saying no to sex, practice saying no to sex.
It's normally saying no to Oscar. He's literally down by my foot, like pouring at me like anything. He's the one I struggled to say no to. Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah, but he's got 4 legs and he's cute and fluffy. I can never say no to cute and fluffy. Hey, Oski. See, how can you say no to that adorable little face?
As he's like,
face missing.
He will in a minute.
Hi, Oscar. Hello,
hey,
handsome.
Oscar. What are you doing, bud? Hello, mate.
He's so cute. I just love his little...
He's like, what's going on? What's going on? His little eyebrows went up in his ears, but what's going on?
I do want to put out there that I'm not saying people can't ask for help either.
No.
Does that make sense? Because that's a beautiful part of
that's
a beautiful part of community.
That's another thing I struggle with. I mean, when you're a strong, independent people, I struggle to help. I mean, that is my...
Isn't it weird how it's so extreme, like the no is one end and then the yes is another to help, isn't it? They're so
I mean, mine stems... I know what mine stems from. I'm a Sagittarian, like Lucy. I'm a stubborn cow. And I will, not saying you're stubborn, Lucy, but you're like me.
I am. I can be. Yeah. I struggle with I struggle with the vulnerability of asking for help.
Yeah, I've learned to be independent, and I've learned to, being a single mum at one point with the 2 kids, I'm a logical person. I get on and do stuff. If I can get on and do stuff, I'll do it. And it takes a lot. It's taken me a lot to turn around and say, I need some help. I
think you still struggle with it, Carly, as you're dragging your leg down to the ponies. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I still struggle with it.
And I do too. I big time struggle with it. Like, I have no problem asking Colin for help. He's been a massive help in my life, but it's outside of my inner circle of that. Does that make sense? Where I get the feeling of, you're too much, Luce. You're going to come across as too much. And that comes from my trauma, that I was too much for people. I wasn't, but for their lives, I was too much. Does that make sense? As a child? And I was not too much at all. Like, as a parent, you're responsible for your child. But for them, they were on their last straw and overextended themselves in every area of their life, that the smallest little thing ended up being too much. And so I struggle with that still to this day, that I'm still healing that part of me that says that people are going to think, and then people also are going to think they're a bit higher than you. Does that make sense? They're going to be like, and I've had that in my life too, where people thought they could have some control over me if I asked them for help, or somehow they were, that they then had all the say.
They're manipulating the situation.
Yeah. And I've had that many times in my life. And it's finding that honest help that is tough out there.
I've been very lucky. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where anyone I've asked for help has put themselves at that level. It's always been like people like Emma, my best mate, or my family, and all the people I've been. I think, well, probably one person, two people, but I was very aware that I knew that it would be a topic of conversation for some time, because they sort of felt that, but I was very aware of the help when I asked for it.
It's interesting you're saying this, because like with my competition that I've done at the moment, so there's a client, she's not asked for help, but I just felt I can help through my services a little bit. So I put something together because she's got a GoFund page set up. And I just think anyone that's, taking the time to do a GoFund page is really struggling, aren't they? They've got some stuff going on. And it's been interesting, the comments. There's been some great kind of people that have helped and have got on board with it and everything else. But there's been a lot of people that have judged that person and been quite vile and quite negative. And I just think it's interesting, isn't it? How when we're talking about people being helped and everything else, different views and different ideas. And some people see the GoFund page as a really negative thing, whereas I see it as like, this is someone down on their luck that's really screaming, this is my last resort to try and get this sorted.
Sorted.
Well, it's the way we gather around people nowadays is a GoFundMe page, when it used to be the church, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's just the modern day. But I see a lot of people, and I have to be careful with how I look at some GoFundMe pages where I'm like, does that make sense? But not yours. I think not yours, or this one that's going on. But
I think there's some people that take advantage of the GoFundMe page situation, and then there's some people that are genuinely, I've had friends. I've had friends that have lost partners, that have suddenly passed away, and they've set up a GoFundMe page in memory of, so they're able to pay for funeral funds and things like, and I think that's very genuine, but I've also seen people that have set up funds to pay for
getting a camper van.
Medical bills for an animal or something, and it's like, well, and when you know them in a situation, you think, well, actually you've actually got quite a few pennies, so
when you know them personally,
and you sit there and you think, well, I mean, we could all be in a situation where we set up a GoFundMe page, but it's depending, isn't it? It is depending on what's genuine.
But then again,
completely agree.
You don't have to put your opinion down for the world to see on the internet. But if your gut is saying no, does that make sense? Then that's enough for you, right? And you have the freedom to let no.
It doesn't
the world
resonate
doesn't have
with
to
you.
know your opinion of why you said no, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I've seen on some of the site, not on my site, but like on some of these other sites that particular GoFund page is on that I'm helping. There's been some really vile comments, and you just think, is that really needed? Is that really necessary?
They're obviously struggling. You don't need to make a nasty comment to make them struggle even more. Keep in your lane.
One of the comments was like that there was because she's put an image of like her late father on there as part of, if you read the story, it's part of the whole thing of what's happened. And one person put a snapshot comment on like, that guy's a lazy bastard, he should get a job. They haven't even read the article. They haven't even realized this person has passed over. And it's like, that is not helpful in any way, shape or form.
No. And then you do get some people in the world that troll just for the sake of it because they want a reaction. So you've got people that have got that, psychological issue of looking for a reaction or out for an argument. You're always going to get somebody's out for an argument, aren't you? But
I just find it interesting how people are with it, and it's like
people react.
Yeah. Well, some people think that they're a bit above.
Yeah.
you know,
That's why we
and
have the Facebook block button. I just think, block that fucker.
Yeah,
yeah,
you
if they
keep
took that away,
unblocking
we
me and
would
blocking me
suffer,
all the
wouldn't we?
time, don't you? Mitch is always forever unblocking me and blocking me again.
Not at all, not at all. Oh dear.
I do it with Lucy.
I know you guys do. I know you guys do, because I'm like, where are you? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Hello?
I need
question mark,
you.
question mark, question.
I need to
Better
feel
check my
protected.
restricted accounts today.
I'm sorry for sending you that photo, Carly. Question mark, question mark, question mark.
The one naked of
Fuck
me.
off. No.
Exactly. It was meant for Colin, not you. You guys are close in the
Don't
algorithm.
freaking lie.
Mitch,
Oh,
that
dear.
one was meant for you, Mitch. Mitch.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
Exactly. Please, please.
Oh, dear. We have
But,
gone well.
yeah.
That's
I know. It makes it's such a tricky chorus, isn't it? But
Yeah.
really, what we're saying to you is be aligned with you. Step into that alignment of being totally, comfortably, and radically in love with yourself, and not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that you know that spirit loves everyone, including you, in your own unique way. And being aligned with yourself, you might make the odd mistake here, but you're gonna really do no wrong. Because you can always come back to yourself and say, well, I did, like the Frank Sinatra song, I did it my way.
She's serenading again. What is it with this serenading?
I think she's like a burlesque singer on the side.
I think there's secretly honestly, a karaoke session coming up.
I took that into a really cheesy area, but Spirit is showing me more, because I come from such an unalignment. Does that make sense? Mishmash of a person I was, where I had no, like, when we talked about grounding, grounding for me was like, what? And it was, I couldn't believe that I could actually have the feeling in my body of being part of this world. So not even being grounded meant my alignment and energy, and I didn't understand energy. I looked at everyone as having them all, even the most people that were so not connected to themselves, I saw as connected to themselves compared to me. Does that make sense? I didn't even know you could. I just thought that that this life was playing a trick on me. I was in a game that I wasn't understanding. Does that make sense? For the longest time? And when spirit really started to show me, you can round, chakra work was for me, realizing I can just, like, even if it's not physically real, energy is real for me. Does that make sense? And I can imagine and see in my mind's eye and get aligned and grounded and connected. That was huge for me. Huge, because with that alignment then started to come in mental alignment and emotional alignment. Does that make sense? That I could start to look at myself and feel different in my body, and then start to say stuff like no.
Yeah, and you start to like find your power. You start to become a new version of yourself.
100%, Mitch. You put it perfectly. Finding your inner power, and that's what it's all about, because it's there. Everyone has it, but according to how they're raised, trauma, whatever, it can be very. I look at it as like a line. It could be like a. Does that make sense? Where it's just not aligned at all.
Yeah.
And when it's aligned, yeah, you might get that false guilt. But even now, when I look at false guilt, and Spirit was just showing me when we were talking about it, Carly. And no offense to my grandparents, they were lovely people, but they raised me with that guilt of you give, give, give. You're of service, Lucy. You're of service, Lucy. Does that make sense? If you're not giving, then you're not worth anything. And they gave of themselves, but they had money and they had loads of like talents, but they also were these people that saw themselves just a bit above everyone else too. Does that make sense? And I never saw myself above. I was like, but I was to give, 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 give. And so when I look at my false guilt, it's there's an essence of their energy in there. Does that make sense? And that's what looking at your shadow does, where I'm like, I know where you come from now. I get it. I get it. And my grandparents have spoken to me from the other side that I don't need to live like that anymore. They've made that loud and clear through many mediums now,
Well, that's
you
good.
know? And so
that's massive healing as well, isn't it?
100%. So I know that that false guilt isn't even real. Like even that energy, it's just showing me the storyline of where that came from. But that has no hold because even on the other side, they're not agreeing with that.
I tell you what, just to jump in there, I love that idea of it's not even real. So anyone who says no, who's stepping into their own power, if the next phase of it is having that false guilt, remind yourself it isn't real.
Yeah.
That guilt isn't real. And I think that will really help a lot of people digest and break down that guilty feeling, that this feeling is not real. I think that's really good. I love that because I think I'm going to think of that the next time I say no to something and I have that guilt trip. We call it
Ask
that guilt
your guilt.
trip.
Where are you coming from? Because they'll show you the story. They'll show you the wisdom of it. Does that make sense? They'll show you the wisdom. They want to. They want to be integrated. Does that make sense? They want to be seen. And so when you start to sell the wisdom, it gives you wisdom for other people too. Of where does your guilt come from? Right?
Definitely.
Where does your guilt? Like the guilt has its place in this world. If we didn't have guilt, like if I went and smacked Mitch across the face out of anger,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a concept of there's a concept
of guilt.
But then there's but then there's this like maybe I wouldn't feel guilty, maybe I'd feel empowered. No,
my chop's going.
But the guilt, if I felt guilt, that's real guilt. Does that make sense? And sometimes shame too. Just a little bit of shame keeps us in order of being mayhem. Does that make sense? That's why we need laws, because some people don't have that guilt, don't have that ability to go, that was wrong.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's a human being, isn't it? With a guilty conscience. Yeah.
So that guilt is healthy guilt. Does that make sense? It's healthy guilt, but that false guilt of you standing up for yourself and then you feel guilty for standing up for yourself, or you feel guilty for saying, no, it's not for me. You know, and then you think, oh, did I hurt that person's feelings, or did I make them think that what they're doing is not worthwhile just because all this stuff comes up, and it's like, I'll put it up on the website because I saw it yesterday. I'll see if I can find it again of like how to say no without like, different ways to say.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was incredible because I was like, we need that, because I think a lot of us just don't. We want to say no.
We don't know how to say no.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because there was, funny enough, we're talking about this. There was actually, it's going on to slightly down a rabbit hole, but there was just actually something.
Guys, we're nearly on the witch now. Just to say.
Okay, I'll do this quick. There was something that come up about how people don't know how to word things and have conversations without having a reaction. So it was about a relationship thing, because that seems to be being flagged up on my Facebook posts at the minute, and it was about how people don't really know how to talk and not, without getting reaction, or a better way of dealing with a conversation. And I think that comes with wisdom and age, but it links in with how saying no, but in a conscious way. So having a conversation in a conscious way with a partner, not with just general everybody. But that's quite interesting, because even though we think we know how to communicate, you're still always learning about how to communicate consciously.
Yeah, and that's what we're really talking about, isn't it, really?
Communicating consciously,
And communications change so much, and it's going to change in the future. You know what I'm saying? Because we've got text now, everything like that. Like even in text, I could type out, real nice sweater, Carly.
And I could take offense to that.
Yeah. When I actually mean it, like, you're really nice sweater, Carly.
Yeah.
You could take
and
it
I could
like,
think you're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
And I could message back, sarcastic cow.
It's all navigating this world. Does that make sense? And navigating the emotions through text and all that kind of stuff. So
and then that boils down to breathing. So if you're having a talking conversation with someone, again, like not lower your energy, but calm it, because obviously we're talking about energy levels and people being, But I think if you calm your energy even when you're saying no, then the way you come across to that person that you're saying no to is not going to be abrupt. So it's a whole thing down to taking a deep breath. And as you answer the no, you breathe out because your voice lowers, it's calmer. And actually, as the energy goes out towards that person, it's a whole combination of things. It's not just one thing. So as your energy goes out and breathes out, that calm energy goes towards the person you've turned around and said no to. And they're not going to then take it and go, well, fucking fussy cow. If I could say no to me, it's gonna be a chain.
And if they do, that's their responsibility.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
It's a them problem,
that's
not
a
a you
huge
problem.
one. That's a huge one for me, is being able to go, oh, I don't have to take on their shit. Because I used to think I had to take on everyone's shit. It was just part of my life. This game I didn't get. You know what I'm saying? And I would just be navigating through that, taking on their emotions. And like you said, that Nine of Wands is being there for people, but not taking on their emotions, not taking on their does that make sense? And
you're not responsible for their reaction to something you've said calmly. So if you've done everything in your possible way to be calm and to interact with that person in a grown up, I use the term loosely, grown up, sensible manner,
or emotional, intelligent way.
Yeah. And you've been calm and collected and you've taken your deep breath and you've been reasonable. And then that person reacts in a certain way. That reaction is that person's responsibility, not yours.
100%, like 100%. The thing is that we somehow, we get this fear of people. Does that make sense? I had a definite, because when I was younger, there was constantly consequences that I didn't understand. Does that make sense for things? And I took it on that this was me. And I didn't realize till I got way older that actually the adults in charge were the ones screwed up. And it had nothing to do with me. I was just the one that ended up hurt out of it. But even into my adult years, I took it that I was responsible for people being upset if I said no. But when you're in alignment with yourself and when you are totally feeling strong and in your own power, you start to see those boundaries. You actually can sense, oh my God, it's not me, it's them.
Yeah, definitely.
And they've got an issue. My newest one, or my next one, is the bad mouthing. So if I say no, is it going to get around to everyone that, some story? Because that's something I've had to deal with too. My growing up years is made up stories. Does that mean that weren't true? So I still struggle, and the Spirit has taken me along that journey of not caring if a story gets
exactly. If something gets twisted or embellished, fuck them, basically.
Yeah, and that's the next level for me on this journey with the no. Does that make sense? Is that fear of, is my name going to be just because they're going to take a vendetta against me? Yeah.
I live in a village, so they can make up whatever they want, I guess.
Exactly.
I know. I not that I've been in that situation very much, but if I have been in that situation and I've voiced my opinion on something, I've sat there and gone, well, I know what's true. I know what's happened. I know in my heart of hearts where I was and what situation. If they want to make something else up, that's up to them.
And again, it's staying in your power with that, is knowing enough. You know why you've said no. You know the mechanics of that. You don't need to worry about any backlash. I've had it recently where there's been something twisted and embellished, and I'm like, whatever. I really have not got time for it.
Yeah. Well, Spirit taught me something. Yeah. Well, can I just say a quick
rush you guys, but we're going to have to
quick one here, just for our listeners and for us. If you are in confusion. Okay, if confusion or what I call murky waters is about, get out. That too is you know what I'm saying? Get out. It should always be clear. If you feel confusion, you're being manipulated. If you feel confusion, you're being lied to. It should feel clear when you're in good communication with people.
Absolutely. Sorry, guys, I'm just putting my boots on.
That's all right. He's like ready
he's gonna
to
hit
fucking
and
run.
isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, this is Paul's knocking on the door asking for sex. That's what's happening. He's like, oh my god, I gotta get going here.
I thought it was more that Oscar needed a wee, but there you go. That's where my thought pattern goes and your thought
Look at
pattern goes.
No, I have actually. I have
You've
a
got an
legitimate
appointment.
reason.
He has an appointment.
You've got an appointment, so we've got to let you go.
Not me, around me. Yeah. So, good
right.
episode, guys.
Yeah, really good stuff. Well, lots of love and light from me, Lucy.
Take care. See you next time from Mitch.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye for now.